Alright, what's going on, guys? Elden Ring Nightreign has been pretty rich in content since its launch, with new things to do happening pretty much every month, and more updates on the way, all leading to the eventual DLC happening sometime later this year. And I don't know about you guys, but I am loving the post-launch support for this game. We have the big Deep of Night update coming out next week, and before that arrives, I want to take a look at everything we know about the DLC so far, because surprisingly, we know a lot. We know the new Nightfarers that will be coming with the DLC, we know several of the new field bosses, we know the general overview of what the story of the DLC will be, and we know what the final boss is, at least in name and description. Now, if you're wondering how we know that, well, it's because Fromsoftware kind of shipped this all with the game in the last update we got, and now it's just fully public. You can find it on Reddit. There are articles about this information. So we've been sitting on this for a few weeks, but I wanted to wait until it was all public before talking about it. And obviously in this video, I'm not going to be showing anything. I'm not going to be playing any audio. I will not even be reading from this directly. This will all be in my own words, describing things that I have seen from now public sources. Now we're going to break all of this down, but I'm going to work in order from least spoilery to most spoilery. So if there's certain information you don't want to know about yet, I will give you a warning, and you can click off if you want to. So as we get started today, if you want to stay up to date on all things Elden Ring Nightreign, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and now let's get into it. So let's start off today, like I said, with the least spoiler information, and just talk about when this is coming out. Now, we've known since even before the game released that DLC was planned to release sometime in Q4 2025. That was on the Steam listing of the game, but it hadn't been officially confirmed by Bandai or anybody until the most recent Katakawa report, which says down there at the bottom that Fromsoftware is currently developing Elden Ring Nightreign DLC, planned for release in fiscal year 2025. Now, there's something very important to notice there. If you look immediately after that for the line about the Tarnished Edition that says planned for release in 2025, they actively differentiate between the year 2025 and the fiscal year 2025. So what does that mean? The fiscal year for 2025 for the Japanese companies goes until March of 2026. So that does leave them room to extend a possible release date all the way out to March of next year. Now, for me personally, I definitely don't think we're gonna have to wait that long. I highly doubt we go to the year anniversary of Nightreign without having the DLC on our hands. But if we're purely sticking to official information, then the DLC is gonna release sometime before March of next year. And that's what we know on the official side of things. Now, that's really all I wanna say about that right now because we have so much else to get through. But look for a release date anytime between the holiday of this year and March of next year. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is that many of the new field bosses were listed as coming to the DLC. So these are going to be new camps on the map, new POIs, and new roaming bosses. I really don't think these are that spoilery. This is mainly all Shadow of the Erdtree content. But of course, here's your warning. Now, these are likely just going to be the POI bosses, not anything super major here. But we have confirmed Mesmer Soldiers, we have Blood Fiends, Spider Scorpions, Inquisitors, Lion Head Imps, and the Ghost Flame Dragon. Now, the only one of those that feels like it might be a roaming field boss is the Ghost Flame Dragon. The rest of them seem like they might just be little camp or POI enemies. Now, other bosses that I think we could see make a return, although are not confirmed, are the Divine Beasts, Dancing Lions, things like the Furnace Golems, the Red Bears, Death Knights. I would like to see those make a return too. Now, unfortunately, I do think they're going to follow the pattern they did with the base game and not include any of the Remembrance bosses, as unfortunate as that is. I think Rolana, even Mesmer would be fantastic to fight in Nightreign. We're definitely not getting PC. The only one I could really maybe see them adding is Commander Gaius. Maybe the Shadow Tree Avatar, because at least those two wouldn't really affect the lore if there were multiple of them, because that was the justification for the base game not having any of the main Remembrance bosses. But we'll just have to wait and see on those. Alright, now we're going to get into the real spoilers. We're going to be talking about the new Nightfarers. Now, let me go ahead and say this up front. There's a big chance that the information we know of so far does change by the time the DLC comes out. And there are a few things that I do think are going to change, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Here is your spoiler warning for the Nightfarers. The first one that we know of so far is currently codenamed Buffer, likely referring to the ability to buff teammates. But the references to this character call him the Scholar, or Academic, which could imply a connection to Glintstone and Raya Lucaria in the context of Elden Ring, but I kinda doubt that. To me at least, it seems like buffs and debuffs are more of a faith thing, and we already have a Glintstone magic character in the game in Recluse. But currently the main weapon for this character is thrusting swords or rapiers. Bit of an odd choice, but again, subject to change. We also do have reference to the character's skill and art. The skill at least currently only says that it straightens the camera, which is probably just some kind of placeholder, definitely not going to be the actual skill we get shipped with the DLC, but the art however, says that it binds enemies together. Now when I read that, I think what's going to happen is that it creates a field where damage is transferred to all enemies within that field. It makes me think of like the Hunter Tether from Destiny. If you played that, you know what I'm talking about. But in Destiny, the Hunter Tether stretches out and attaches to enemies in an area, kind of holding them in place, and transfers damage to everyone tethered. But it also casts a debuff on an enemy, so it's not useless when you're only fighting one enemy like in a boss fight. If all the buffer's ultimate does is just transfer damage to all enemies attached in that field, then that would be useless in a one boss fight. But if it also cast a debuff, that will not only be on brand for the character, but be extremely useful against a Night Lord. So that's just where my mind goes when I'm reading this. Now we have almost 8 minutes of dialogue from this character, and we get to learn quite a bit about his backstory. We have reason to believe he's not just a human, as he consistently refers to his kind, saying things like, "I hope I can carry on the legacy of my kind." But he's on a quest for vengeance and has a deep hatred for the main antagonist of the DLC, who I'm not going to name yet. But Buffer also has a habit of making tea, which he offers to the player several times. But he does also act like a scholar, with references to reading old books and wanting to learn the stories of the other Nightfarers. But that's really all the specifics we can pull from this audio. It's a lot of talk about victories, about battle, about wanting to defeat the main antagonist, which I'm sure will make a lot more sense in context when the DLC actually drops, but on its own, there's not a whole lot to glean here. Now as for the other Nightfarer, we don't know quite as much, but we know a bit more about how the gameplay mechanics of this character will work. The code name of this character is Attacker, but references to the character call him something like Mortuary, or a word referring to death or graves. Now this Nightfarer has the primary weapon of hammers. Maybe that includes things like flails or maces, I don't know, but hammers on its own feels a bit weird. The skill for this character puts it into a state where the next attack will do an auto dodge and a follow-up counter, allowing you to survive any attack it seems like, and dish out some free damage. The ultimate is called Blink Stage. We don't yet know exactly what it does, but it can be charged, kind of like Wilder's ultimate. There were also parameters for this character's Remembrance Quest, and the Remembrance Quest involves fighting each of the other Nightfarers. So to me, it kind of sounds like this character will be some kind of like Grim Reaper, where you're trying to bring all the Nightfarers to the grave in some form. And this one's pretty weird to me because hammers as the primary weapon doesn't seem like it's going to be that useful. Maybe there's a very specific new moveset with these hammers that makes them a lot better. I sure hope so, because otherwise, Raider just seems like a better option. I mean, he's already a strength character. You have a counter ability that lets you survive any attack and dish out damage in return. I just wonder what the utility here is, to where I would use this attacker character over a character like Raider, because colossal weapons have much more range than hammers, dish out much more damage, and stun bosses much better. So I do think there's one aspect of this Nightfarer that's going to really change the game that we just don't know about yet, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. But out of these two that we know of so far, how are you feeling about them? I can definitely see the utility with Buffer. I've really been waiting for a character that focuses on buffs and debuffs and potentially healing allies, and I did think that was a niche that was kind of missing from the gameplay loop in Nightreign. I'm not sold on Attacker yet, definitely going to have to see something else to make me want to play that character, and I hope we do soon. Okay, so now we're going to talk about kind of the story that's depicted in the DLC, the little bit we know, and the main antagonist, who is likely going to be the final boss. So here is your spoiler warning for this. This information is primarily gleaned from the audio on Buffer, since he appears to have a deep hatred for the antagonist, called the Dreglord. He describes the Dreglord as a mass of souls, an amalgamation of the flesh, bone, and blood of the fallen, with power that he describes as rivaling Holstor. Now, it seems like in a similar sense, defeating the new Night Lords of the DLC will eventually reveal the Dreglord, and it does seem like the Dreglord is described as the primordial Lord of Night, who is the source of night itself, apparently more so than Holstor. Now this gets my brain turning, speculating on what this boss might be. What form is it going to take? But I doubt it's going to be done in a cop-out way where it's just kind of a combination of all the other Night Lords. I just don't see them doing that. But the name Dreglord does kind of imply a mass of many things, and the description on its own makes my mind go to something like the Rotten from Dark Souls 2, but I know it's not going to be the same thing. They're going to have to make it much more epic than that. I would also like to see the story be a bit more in-depth than just, kill more Night Lords, kill the Dreglord, and that's it. But as it stands right now, that's what we have. We don't have a whole lot of details, but that name and description is enough to get you thinking for sure. But what do you think about the Dreglord? What do you think it's going to look like? How hard of a boss do you think it'll be? As always with Fromsoftware, I'm sure it's going to be the hardest boss in the game, but I'm ready to fight it. But currently that is everything we know about Elden Ring Nightreign's DLC. I'm sure whenever this new Deep of Night update comes out, they're gonna drop a lot more information about it. That's just been the pattern so far with this game. Like it or not, it is what it is. There are still quite a few things I'm wondering about and I'm surprised we haven't seen yet, that I really hope are included with this DLC. The main of those being the new weapons from Shadow of the Erdtree. Because I feel like right now in the base game of Nightreign, the weapon pool feels so stagnant. You get the same weapons every single time, and there's a lot of them I've straight up never seen, and I've got well over 100 hours in this game. Star Scourge Great Swords, Malekith's Black Blade, Blasphemous Blade. I played Wilder for pretty much all of my time on this game up until recently. Never saw any of those weapons. And he is primarily more weighted to receive great swords. And I was a bit surprised that these two new Nightfarers are not making use of the new weapon types that came with Shadow of the Erdtree, which kinda has me thinking we straight up might not see them in the DLC. I really hope that's not the case. I'm gonna be really disappointed if the weapon pool is not expanded, but that is a point of concern as of right now. Also, more Dark Souls bosses. Honestly, I keep forgetting they're in the game because there's only 5. So I really hope the DLC expands that catalog significantly. And the other thing we don't know about yet is a new Shifting Earth event. Hopefully we get at least one in the DLC, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. But what do you make of all this information? How do you feel about it? Are you happy with the new Nightfarers? Do you like the prospect of the Dreadlord? Y'all let me know down below. With all that though, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here, and I will catch you in the next one.